Late Night with the Devil is a supernatural horror flick written, directed, and edited by the Cairns brothers, Colin and Cameron. While it's hard to find a definitive answer on the budget of this film, there are estimates from 1 to 1.5 million, and as of now, the film has grossed over 11 million worldwide. The film was brought to my attention when David Dasmalchian, say that 5 times fast, star of this film and great actor from the likes of Prisoners and The Dark Knight, mentioned it on the last podcast on the left episode, which debuted on March 18th. For those of you looking to watch this spooky movie before diving in much further, it's available in the convenience of your own home via Shudder and AMC Plus, but is still in select theaters. The film has gathered praise and controversy quickly in its run. For being a very fun, spooky, and hard-hitting horror film on a small budget, and B, for the use of AI images in the film as confirmed by the directors slash editors slash milkmen, dog walkers, painters.
Hell, the boy will fill up the Gatorade cooler, walk the dog, and paint the back porch. I'm telling you, that fucking that outplayed with them. Out, and he can pass.
Themselves, the Cairns brothers. While we get into the debate and the morality of AI usage from this film, I think it would only be fair that we talk about the film itself before we dive too deep into that element. What should be noted is that this film has tons of charm, largely, due in part to the previously mentioned lead performance of David Dasmalchian and the wonderful 70s talk show aesthetic used for the set throughout the entirety of the film. For a synopsis, I was going to say quick, but I'll try to get it as quickly as possible before getting into the thematic elements and what makes this film good. The fictionalized universe this film exists in sees Dasmalchian quickly become the second biggest late night talk show host behind the legend Johnny Carson on the show Night Owls in the 70s. Dasmalchian plays Jack Delroy, who is noted to make regular visits to The Grove, a fictional camp for the rich and powerful, very much inspired by Bohemian Grove. Delroy also lost his wife recently to cancer, lung cancer, as a non-smoker, as of the airing of the Halloween night episode in which this found footage film was based. And the wife, whom passed away, is shown on an episode of Night Owls shortly before her death. The death takes a large toll on Jack/David, who takes a month break before coming back full force and attempting to usurp Carson once and for all by having on many occult guests for this special Halloween night show, including Christo, a medium, Carmichael Haig, a magician and skeptic, and June Ross Mitchell with Lily. Lily is thought to be possessed. A last tidbit is that June is having relations with Jack, and Lily is the sole survivor of a mass suicide committed by the Satanic Church that worshipped a devil named Abraxas. Now, time for some critical aspects before we go deeper into the story. The prologue of this film does well to explain a lot of the pre-Halloween episode information for the film. This was really the most efficient way to deliver vital information that plays a large role in the film's finale. As the episode unfolds, we are shown a violent sort of trauma where Christo is affected by a spirit in a way where he violently vomits on stage and is taken away by ambulance quickly, or rather, he is taken away by ambulance before quickly passing at the hospital. This aspect of going on after Christo's death is criticized by Jack's co-host as he thinks they are playing with forces they don't understand. Kind of just going back a little bit slightly, as I said, this is a bit of a found footage film, but it also plays as almost like a pseudo documentary. Some people didn't like the blend of these two. I didn't mind it. Like I said, the prologue does help expedite the story. So far, you've only run into minor spoilers, but from here on out are more major spoilers. And while we're here together, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I have tons of horror content on this channel and will continue to make horror movie content in the future. Rather than touch the brakes after the death and learning of the death, Jack goes full speed ahead by pressuring June into showing a demonstration of the possession from Mr. Wriggles within Lily. During this demonstration, we see a seemingly real possession in which Lily contorts and levitates. Skeptic Carmichael Haig puts this all into question when he does a demonstration in which co-host Gus is hypnotized, but we, the audience, see him reveal a gory and horrifying sight where he is infested with worms and bursting at the seams. Haig shows this to be the case of mass hypnosis, and the crew plays back the footage of what really happened, backing up Haig's claim. Lily requests they do the same with her footage, which shows the possession to be authentic, but also causes her to become possessed once again. June, Gus, and Carmichael are killed in the ensuing possession, while Jack is thrown from the stage before a horrifying nightmare unfolds. Jack is taken through his life and career as a host leading up to this moment, revealing his connection to the demon possessing Lily through the Grove and his responsibility behind his wife's death as a part of a deal with the devil for his TV success. During this reveal is a scene where Jack's deceased wife begs Jack to let her out of her suffering. Jack does so by taking a ceremonial dagger from the satanic mass suicide and stabbing her with it, only to reveal he had stabbed Lily as he breaks from the hypnotic spell. So, what was done well, and what does this all mean? First and foremost, the possession was really well done, with Lily being creepy and then horrifying at different times. While I didn't live it, this film feels like a huge love letter to the 70s, from the mentioning of Johnny Carson, the set design, the look of the TV set and the film itself, the now infamous images between commercial breaks, the AI images, the homage to The Exorcist, Captain Howdy, and Mr. Wriggles in this film, as well as the satanic cult aspect, which ultimately nods to Anton LaVey, who would form the Church of Satan in the 1960s, but also cult activity that is now infamous from the 70s, such as Jonestown and the Manson family. I also really like the story as a whole. How we get important information in the prologue, like I stated previously, that pays off down the line, especially concerning Jack's occult connections and the blood on his hands regarding his wife. To top this off, we get an added element where we're not sure what's true because of Carmichael's hypnotic display. The special effects were also tremendous. I have a high appetite for cheese so long as the gore that comes with it is really well done. And this is, of course, talking about horror movies. While I haven't rated Terrifier 1 or 2 tremendously high with a rating of 3.5 or 3 out of 5 for both, I'm still excited to see the third part of the trilogy because it's got some really great gore. What is telling to me and what should be telling to you in my rating of this, and spoiler, I'm going to rate this higher than those two films, is that gore can make up for a lot, maybe a lack of great acting and story, but when a movie has the gore and that acting and story is when it kind of breaks into its own tier. And then I kind of stated it before, at least about Lily, but really solid performances from Des Malchin and the actor who plays Lily. Some negatives about this is it is a bit cheesy. Obviously, the gore does kind of nullify this a bit, but you get some cheesy animations, especially before the horror really ramps up, with some clearly fake electricity. And this is early on, of course. Also, when Lily is full on possessed the second time, her form was a lot less scary than the first time she was possessed. The electricity bit didn't really bother me, as it was kind of just good old schlock, but the second possession and the form that took was more impactful because this is supposed to be like the final form. The ending does kind of, again, nullify it a little bit, but it's obviously just worth mentioning. Between the commercial bits they were a little bit strange. It kind of, or what I should say, in between segments of the actual TV show and what we see behind the scenes during the commercials was a little bit strange. And I think you can get past this, but it did take me out of things a little bit because it asked for too much suspension of disbelief. It's a bit ludicrous considering we're talking about a possession film, but to have a black and white camera recording backstage events, again, it kind of took me out of it sometimes. And, you know, we don't believe these things, but you're like, this isn't making sense logically when you're watching it. It would be nice to have it make more sense. Maybe, like, I don't know, implement different strategies so you can get in between segment exposition, but without it feeling like, okay, like you don't record backstage really with an actual camera walking behind people. If you know what I mean, Ultimately, I'm probably the most critical of horror because I love it so much and I watch it the most. These films and this film have flaws, which is to be expected for such a small production, but I still really liked it. I give it a 3.5 personally, and this is largely due in part to the story being really rich, as far as Jack Delroy and his occult past coming back to bite him. I also think this serves as a really cool version of a cautionary tale. Fast success, especially through demonic means, can rob you of the experiences and wisdom that those who make their way there slowly possess. This also goes hand in hand with the theme of being willing to do anything to get to the top, and this being a clear weakness. Jack was fully willing to put his safety and the safety of those around him at risk by going through with something he thought would get him closer to that coveted number 1 spot. Last but not least is the theme, which is seemingly borrowed from The Exorcist and probably a lot more films, in which this film pays great homage to The Exorcist I'm talking about. And that is to not play with forces you do not understand. The Exorcist has this as more of a minor element, as it is very rich thematically, but we get the message through Reagan as she uses a Ouija board and doesn't understand the negative force that is Captain Howdy, which leads to her being possessed by an otherworldly spirit that brings death and destruction in its wake. We are given that same tale with a variation. Lily was essentially destined to have this done to her, no fault of her own due to the satanic cult she comes from as a child. And while she is wanting to push things further and further for the show, it is hard to tell if she is not always under the influence of something evil. It is ultimately Jack who is put in a position to steer either clear or towards danger, and because of his ambition, he tempts fate by jumping into the fire with the devil. Now, finally, let's get to the topic of AI in film, an aspect that has enraged film fans online. I'd be lying if I said I didn't see the ethical dilemma that this type of action possesses, or poses, really. Somebody who could have designed these images would be able to support themselves and was instead replaced by a machine. I think it can hurt those who want to work within that specific aspect of film and art, and will likely have more widespread ramifications in the future. I honestly didn't want to be critical against this film because I love what it was able to do. It was very stylish, a unique story with a lead I very much like in David Desmelchin. In a time where horror films, even this good, just a 3.5 out of 5, are relatively rare. I will do what I think is best and point out that this is not a good direction for the industry, despite the fact that it allowed a lower budget film like this to exist and only occurs in 3 images. I can only speculate that these images would have cost between $1,000 and $2,000, which wouldn't have broke the bank. But with this small of a budget, as I said, it's speculated the entire budget to be $1 million and $1.5 million, somewhere thereabouts. It might have stretched them too far to afford that. I do not intend to excuse the decision, though. Let me start over. I'm not going to let it impact my rating, though I'm not trying to excuse it. I know I mentioned only 3 images, and it's a low budget film, but it is ultimately going to affect people who have made films great in the past, and that individualized touch that will be lost by implementing this. Again, I don't excuse it. I'm not going to let it impact my rating, but I do want to shine a light on it, much like others have, and I am now, while pointing out that there are negatives that this will lead to. I will say, if in the future a larger production does the same, I may well have an even stronger take, and in that instance, let it impact my rating, as I think it would take the decision out of a more gray and murkier area where this situation lies, and make it a lot more black and white. Ultimately, the producers have the right to make their own decisions, as do we as consumers. I would still recommend this film, and I think a good majority of those originally interested in this film are still interested in seeing it or have already done so. It's unfortunate that this narrative has been maybe the loudest narrative currently surrounding this film, but those are the breaks when you make a decision like this one, which has larger reaching impact. I will say, I do think that people talking a lot about this aspect of the film may scare others off of doing it, and that might be the win, but I do think the direction that things are going with AI, it's more likely that we see films doing this in the future. I want to know your opinions on the merits of this film itself and your thoughts on AI. I think it's pretty clear that, yes, there's a lot more negatives than positives to doing it. I think it just kind of comes down to where your leniency is for that decision. I think everyone probably would have rather them not have done it. Just for maybe purely the fact that now that aspect isn't the only thing clouding this film. I know I'm pretty lenient as far as where I go on it, though I can see why people are upset about it. So let me know your opinions on it down below. Thank you for joining me. Again, be sure to subscribe, and I will catch you on the Flippity Floop. Bye, y'all.